When a poor worker is poor, all his life savings in order to protect the honor of the girl are spent.
Al-Kaha is a poor merchant in the dark before death.
A merchant said that she told that poor man. But he did not know that fate was a lesser punishment for the great tyranny inside that same hell.
This is a structure that is chilling to the core.
About greed, arrogance, and the silent justice of fate.
What happened that night inside that dark prison?
Outside the village of Alexandria, there was a huge brick oven owned by Mr. Khalid. It was more like hell, where souls exploited the money of the poor, and with every brick they saved. Aaron had been working in that kiln for 10 years, kneading clay and carrying bricks in front of the smoldering fire. He was only 28 years old, but the oven was hot. The smoke, the atmosphere, the hard work, the family, and the rivers made him look like a 40-year-old man. His forehead was covered with jute and red clay, and it had cracked so much that blood started coming out of them while walking. Near the oven, inside a dilapidated clay pot, was the old man who wanted Baba Rahim to ask constantly. 10 years ago, Baba Rahim borrowed money from Mr. Khalid for Ola Jazuja, but it did not work. And the rest of Deen was trying to live his life, to Abudia, trying to cough up Rahim's door to blood, while Aaron was burning every day in the fire of the oven, eating half a loaf and depriving himself of his strength to collect one silverware after another inside a treasury hidden in the wall of the hut. He had only one solution: to collect 100 pieces of silverware to secure the freedom of their oppressed father, Mr. Khalid. Finally, that day came after 10 years of work that would drain his blood and his soul. The 100 pieces of silverware were completed. In the morning, Harun took the pieces out of the container and tied them in an old cloth bag and held it to his chest. He shared that they were Azam's treasure in the world, so he went to his father, the disciple, and kissed his trembling hands and said, with tears in his eyes, "Oh, today I will throw this money in the face of Mr. Khalid and buy our freedom. After today, you will not be able to live in this miserable hut. We will go far away and build a small life for ourselves." Rahim's eyes were filled with blood, and he placed his trembling hand on his son's head and said, "Then my son, may God make me a helper and protector." Harun went out to Mr. Khalid's palace, holding 10 years of his life savings. His steps today were filled with pride and hope, and between a clearing of dirt on the road and around a palace of hearing, they suddenly heard hypocritical cries, "You are torn from the heart." He stopped in his place and turned towards the sound source. There was dust on the road, and then the dirt saw that they were not joking about it. Jabaroa, the servant of Mr. Khalid al-Kasi, the servant of Mr. Khalid al-Kasi, was forcefully dragging the old widow, Zaina, towards the palace to collect the debt. His little orphan daughter, 10 years old, was crying while clinging to her mother's cloak, refusing to let her go. Zaina was arriving crying, "For God's sake, he must separate us from the child. I will work for me for the day and I will pay off the debt, penny by penny, but do not make me a mother and leave my daughter an orphan on the streets." But Jabbar violently pulled the little girl from her mother's cloak, then pushed her by the side and it hit the ground. The little girl threw herself on her mother's chest and shouted in anger, "They are forced to use my harsh tongue. No one will hear your screams, old woman. Your husband pays 100 silver coins from Mr. Khalid, and his rules are clear. Either pay the 100 now or you will become a slave from today, working in the palace for life and leaving your orphan daughter wandering in the Sharia." The little girl was crying as she held her mother, and in her eyes there was a helplessness that broke the stone. As for Zainab, she was covered in dust. She raised her hands to hear and shouted, "Oh God, is there anyone near Hamna? Is there anyone who sleeps like a child?" Aaron was standing behind the tree, watching everything, with a silver coin in his hands that he had saved during 10 years of his life. Years of Iraq, hunger, and blood, and who was able to liberate his father? He saw a defeated mother, his aspiring father, suffering from blood loss, and he knew that not paying the debt today would mean the death of his father as a slave. But on the other hand, Ammonius was suffering from her filth, and a little girl was lying in the Sha'aria. There were no tests more difficult than this for the conscience of a human being. The mind was filled with the screams of the child and the supplications of a mother, so his humanity rebelled within her, and he said to himself, if he were freed today and left behind this mother and her daughter, then Caro, the prisoner of their cries, would be cursed forever. Abd Ali Shifteh Assam took a decisive step and said with a loud voice, "Stop," forcing everyone to turn to him in surprise. The Rune approached her and his eyes were filled with pain and peace. When he lifted Zainab from the ground, Sam took out the old piece of cloth that contained 10 years of savings and threw it in Jabbar's face. The silver pieces were scattered on the ground, making a ringing sound. Ron said firmly, "This is 100 pieces of silver. Leave this mother alone." The Sant noticed that even Jabbar himself froze from the awe of the situation. The men quickly counted the money and found that it was complete. Zainab Muhadith did not believe it and felt that God had sent 2 angels to her in the form of a poor person. She fell at Ron's feet and was crying, "My son, I am now safe from her escape, even if you lead our lives. I ask God to never abandon you and to provide you with his hidden treasures." Ron smiled at her and patted the child on the head. He had a lot of money in his pocket now, and 10 years of savings were gone in one moment. But as Zainab was leaving, clasping her mind and saying goodbye, Jabbar's devilish laughter rang out in the place, a heart of mockery. "You did a great thing, Aaron, and paid off this widow's debt, but your debt was not repaid. Today was the time for your payment, and you knew that Mr. Khalid does not know mercy in matters of money. Can you imagine what he would do to you when he saw you with money?" Aaron felt as if the ground had been pulled from under his feet. He realized that he now did not have even a single piece. "I am the door of Syed Khalid's palace." He was waiting for him as if it were a door to death. He had so much pride in doing good deeds in his life, but he could not imagine what terrifying torment awaited him in return for the sacrifice. In his palace, Syed Khalid's majlis was like the palace of a pharaoh, with luxurious carpets covering the ground, and Syed finding your mark to smoke his hookah behind the buyer with his thick faces and merciless faces. Suddenly, he opened the heavy doors of the palace, and the barbarians entered, and they were sorely beaten until they threw him at his feet, Syed Khalid. Harun's forehead was covered with mud, but in his eyes there was no remorse, common alienation, said Mr. Khalid with an angry voice as he blew out the hookah smoke. "There is nothing to force this bastard. Today, after 10 years, he came to pay off his debt. He picked up the money." Jabbar laughed sarcastically and said, "Sir, this bastard tried today to become an invalid. Kama cut off the silver coins every time he collected them in 10 years to satisfy the widower Zainab's parents, so that Hahiya and her daughters would not become slaves in your palace. He did not suppress it now until the lacquer unit was cut off." Mr. Khalidalak did not listen until his face turned red with anger. For him, the issue was not just 100 pieces of silver. Rather, it was a slap on his pride, how he could trade while their servant was ungrateful for showing generosity instead of paying his debt. He shouted in the voice of the palace, "Yaran, how dare you waste my right and show generously? Do you realize which fire you ignite with your hands? The Murid's trumpet will die in agony now. Ron raised his head and looked into his eyes steadily and said,
Sir, consider my father a responsibility and you can take from me whatever work you want, but I could not see Aman's opinions being separated from her escapism and being led into eternity.
And God is a witness that I did not do what I did. This response increased Mr. Khalid's anger and he said, You will regret it and you will wish for death and not find it.
Then he signaled to his men to take him to the blind mill from today.
You will spend your whole life in the darkness of that basement.
He bound his feet with chains that frayed him to the bone. And if the mill stops for a single stroke, it makes him die hungry and thirsty.
After a few moments, his men dragged Harun towards Amki and Dark Kaboom in the palace.
Ibn Hadid's throat swelled, and from within him came the smell of rot and death. He pushed him forcefully and the men pushed through the stairs until he crashed onto the floor of the dark basement. Then the iron door was closed by Ipsit Menwan, and his basket with the world was cut off. It was the basement of the blind mill, with a stone mill in the middle.
Massive and heavy, it usually requires 2 strong horses to move it.
But here 1 year now had to be managed by one. I placed Aaron in his hands and Salah's heavy iron feet.
Once upon a time, or perhaps a long time ago, there was no sign of darkness in the darkness.
His condition worsened greatly due to the constant rotation of the heavy mill. His hands were cracked and bleeding, and his ribs protruded from hunger and exhaustion. Whenever he tried to stop a little, the guards would raise him above him, or withhold water from him. And one night that was not as dark for him as the other. It's his very embodiment, the ancients stumbled. A plaster on the windmill's arm, and blood flowing from his cracked lips.
Remember his old father, who does not know in what circumstances he will be turned away. He cried while getting excited in the dark. Oh God, let me not give up, but my body is no longer strong.
I swear not when I give that money to the widow.
I am happy because the nation and its daughters are left behind. But, O Lord, I have protected creation, so will you leave me alone in this darkness?
My Lord, Kadhania is from this mill of death.
That was a humiliated call.
He is the one who endured this torment as a punishment for his greatest good deeds. One of the systems of power is that when the blood of the victim falls on the ground, you will guard the gates of heaven. Haram grabbed Al-Rayam Jadid's arm with his wounded hands. No one knows where this unseen power came from. He released his morning cry and collected all his pain, and all his suffering and all his certainty in God.
Why did he push that huge room with all his force?
Suddenly they came, violent, cracking and scratching. That room is Sakil, which has been rotating in place for years. If it breaks, it suddenly comes out of its axon. What a massive enemy! The giant room slid from its place,
sticky to one side.
As for Aaron, he also stuck firmly to the ground. His shaking hand hit the floor. Where there had been Raha, the ground now seemed hollow.
Aaron touched the spot with a glance.
He found some old stone slabs covered in dirt. He gathered what strength he had left and pulled one of the boards. As soon as he removed it, I felt sorry for his scent, which was so cold and mysterious. She hugged her face. And in the voice of the gambler, the creeping fear of that small hole in the family. Ram looked down at her and Faso stopped. The earth was under the womb and my skin was not good. Inside is an old stone staircase covered in dust.
It descends deeper than the basement itself, towards unknown darkness. Dalek was no enemy staircase.
It looked like no one had opened it in centuries. She was dragging Khalid. Ron had locked her in this acceptance and its aftermath. But that oppressor did not know what the divine power concealed from him. Under this place of his torment, the staircase had old broken stone steps. And the one that has been closed for centuries creaks under Ron's feet. And whenever the year Q came down from the basement, the air was filled with a strange resonance and the smell of ancient music. Heavy iron shackles were on his hands and feet. It collides with stones and makes frightening sounds. But the fear is internal. At that moment, Al-Gamad turned curious. He began to gasp as he felt the boy's walls with his wounded hands. After descending about 20, 50, or 20 degrees, his feet settled on the flat, cold floor. It was not a dirt land. The floor is very wide and made of carved stones. Ron turned to stare at the Larakian boy. From an old crack in the palace's foundations, she was a thin ray of light and very afraid of the Duke. It falls directly into the middle of that cave-like room. Ron dragged her away, choosing to rub the rays. His feet were pressed against something solid and heavy. With trembling hands, he began to remove the accumulated dust and dirt from Dacron. As soon as the turbulent layer was removed, a luminosity appeared beneath that faint cloud. From her round, swollen eyes, it was not a dull stone, but a large and heavy ingot of pure stupidity. There was a burning sensation in his throat. He started to feel more excited about Birkbakken and his hand was trembling. There wasn't just one alloy. But underneath the dust is a whole pile of gold bullion. Nearby were placed huge sandstones from ancient times. A time when its woods rot and the diamonds and jewels are littered with it. And old gold coins. It was a secret treasure belonging to a king or sultan from centuries past. Buried under the palace of Altajari Khalid. The mists of time have hidden him. Harun collapsed to the ground in a standing position. And something exploded in his mind all at once. Oh God, the plans for him are so cohesive and great. The stray merchant, Khalid Bahraun, has lost himself in this ruined dome. In reward for his goodness and righteousness, he wanted him to wake up and die under the stone of mercy. But that oppressor was not subject to this same punishment. Ron will lead her to the greatest success in her life. Ron placed his head on the ground, crying and prostrating. Surely you do not let the tears of the poor go away. In any case, there is wisdom hidden in it. But as soon as he raised his head from prostration, he realized the truth. He was sitting on top of a pile of wealth worth billions. But his hands and feet are still in Tin Salah's iron shackle. His body was a station of asylum and wounds. Her sacrifice is gold for me. Ron looked at his chains helplessly. How will I get out of this dark cave? And if the men of Altajari knew about it, they will take the gold. And they leave a body buried here. While he was immersed in these thoughts, suddenly there was a horse and horse sound. Let's open the heavy iron door of the dome at the top. The blood in Irukarun froze. He quickly hid in the darkness of the stairs. At the top, the merchant cult had lost his sleep from Daliel. Aaron was bold when he preferred Masada as a widow. To pay the merchant's debt. It devours Khalid's ego from within. And at this time of night, he decided to go down to the basement himself. This is Harun with a voice. The year's renunciation obliges the poor man to accept my feat. There were inputs that ignited the fire. In the other hand, the voice. Behind him was his powerful subordinate. As soon as he descended the basement stairs, he froze in place from the horror of the scene. The nomads were sleeker than out of place. We open a deep hole in the ground that leads to the hidden staircase. Aaron was not there. What is this? That is, we should celebrate that despicable person.
Khalid growled. Direct the torchlight around a hole.
The rain did not reach that cave through the stairs.
Wide at the bottom.
Until it was lost, my bar was gone and the jewels were scattered.
From the brightest flame. Khalid and Jabbar's eyes widened in shock.
That poison called greed.
What runs through humanity's veins is endless. He completely controlled Khalid's mind. He couldn't believe how huge the sin was. Al-Mandakaran was buried under his belt. So my treasure. A devilish, savage smile spread across my face.
His greed had reached its limit.
He no longer wanted anyone to share this secret with him. Even the closest relatives. He turned around and suddenly looked like Jabbar. He forced me to come out immediately and closed the cellar door from the outside. Until I call you, don't let anyone in. This one came to me.
He was mighty himself. He looks at Dahab with beautiful, bearded eyes.
But he obeyed his master's command.
So she went out and closed the door, the iron weighing heavy from the outside.
Now he is no longer in this state of death. Only 2 people. This is a merchant blinded by greed. Poor work in chains. They hide in the darkness of the stairs.
Khalid quickly went downstairs.
He carries the torch. And the pile of stupidity is not hidden until you throw up at it like a madman. He was kissing stupid bullies and crushing them hysterically. And at that moment,
when Aaron was hiding in the dark with his chains,
Khalid stood up. His suffering was the brutality of the attack.
Along with the greed of stupidity.
He took out a long, extremely sharp dagger from his waist. So, Aaron, you've seen my treasure.
Khalid began to slowly advance towards him.
He points the dagger. You are very lucky.
Because your poor eyes are figs.
They saw all this wealth before you died.
But the victory of this treasure.
We'd love to have you here forever. The shackles were on Aaron's feet, preventing him from war.
His hand is missing. His body was trembling from the heat, while standing in front of him.
Monster pumped from Wakasan.
He carries an exposed dagger.
Anakel was shining brightly.
Huge treasure, and the madness of the Katman.
He had a sharp dagger in his hands. May you embrace the yellow flame.
Do they not ignore his feet?
You were bound by these restrictions. Heavy iron, which he toiled to the bone.
Because of the severity of her pregnancy.
About Tarajua.
But the last wall is at the stairs.
Blocking method. He laughed without laughing. Sarcastic puppet. You thought, Aaron? We will fix you like that.
He was taking a step closer to him.
After a step. This alleged goodness that you brag about.
He is the same one from whom you became your god in death.
And today, your old father will die. He chokes on a cough. As for you, you will want art in this darkness. Under my palace.
This treasure.
And this palace. This is all power. I am the god of this village. Close my eyes. He had given himself up to death. But in his heart there was no regret. It was in ear's ear and still hesitated.
The screams of that bright little girl. Then the joyful sound of the illiterate meeting. Aaron raised his face to hear.
He said in a very low voice. But he is interested. You are the all-knowing of what is in the heart. My soul was safe with you. Mitchet takes it. But the rule of this pharaoh. Pin your hands. Merchant Khalid Alkin raised Jaralia into the air. Ignorance stabs him in the chest.
But they were surprised.
That terrifying silent wheel began. Moved by divine power, it revolves. The one whose voice no one hears. How greed works the human mind. How does this scene unfold now? In this basement.
Khalid was about to die.
When his eyes fell, they were surprised.
On something shiny and heavy. Pinned to the wall directly behind her was a rune.
It was huge and old. Studded with pure gold and diamonds. Half of them died inside the cellar wall.
This was the crown in fact.
Part of an old and weak column. Holds the basement cover. The dagger stopped in Khaled's hands as soon as Aldahab responded. The widening of his eye defined him. He drooled from extreme greed. They completely forgot about Aaron. And your madman looked towards a crown. This is the most expensive thing in the world. Khaled screamed madly at me. He hung the torch and dagger on the ground. He began to pull the heavy crown from the wall with all his hands. It was Aaron who raised the twins from death. He watches the scene with amazement. This wall has been fixed. He is the one who carries the weight of the entire basement. Stop, Aaron screamed in horror. This wall is weak. If you pull it, the whole basement will be fine. But he is a merchant who is greedy and greedy. Didn't hear anything. It's called an insect. If you want to stay away from this gold. He pulled Khaled with all his brutality. The crown is studded with powerful diamonds. A scream broke out throughout the basement. Omar repelled Abba. The ears were almost torn. The crown came out of the wall. But the old stone column. The break with Doeen is huge. What happened was unavoidable. He started you in Al-Kabawiya apartments. Huge blocks of stones began. And dust falls like rain. Khaled turned to the war, screaming. And his hands dried up. And it was in the basement under his feet. But it was too late. A fortune fell upon her. And arrogance. He roofed his entire palace. Lump sum. A scream came out from Maraba. One. Then it disappeared under tons of stones. That crown is Ridhal Khalid, who bumped into the poor all his life. Bury my life under my treasure. Because of his greed. Greed has made its grave within gold itself. As for Aaron? It was very close to the stairs made of strong stones. A cup of fallen blocks. But the storm of dust and dirt. It made Amvesa choke. Half of the cellar was completely destroyed. Aaron was the one who followed her. He drags Rakuda. And they were surprised. I started to sound very tempted. It comes from the top. The iron cellar door was heavy, which was closed by Jabbar. It now breaks from the outside. Hurry up. Break the door. My son. Aaron is inside. This was the sound of Mara crying loudly. My enemy is not strong. That broke the door. Iron is heavy. Urban label. The street lights entered. For strength from top to inside. Aaron opened his eyes with great difficulty. Government soldiers came down the stairs. And their turbans. The most impartial judge stood. And respect in the city. And he made me happy with it. Zainab stood up to her. Zainab and her daughter. They are the Tiani, led by Harun Manzil Manzalim. So she paid with her life for what killed her. This woman did not remain silent. These are our syllables, Aaron. That was the woman. There were days left. Many nights. In front of the judge's palace in the city. Hungry, thirsty. They cry and shout. Khalid, my merchant, complains. He was the judge. He is our man, Adel Al-Tayyab. He learned the truth from the tears of this oppressed widow. He ordered government forces. How important is the palace? It was Jabbar and the rest of the servants. I tied them up smoothly as the soldiers came out. The soldiers quickly descended. We passed the stairs to the bottom. And when she saw what would adorn Aaron Mokaden, and covered in blood, I cried, crying. And I fell at my feet. Yemen did well to me. What torment you endured for my sake. And for my sake, baby girl. I came to save you, Bonnie. The judge issued his order forn. And in moments, the blacksmith snapped the iron chains. About my hands and my feet. Aaron fell to the ground. He breathes freedom for the first time. The soldiers advanced and found. The last shed in the basement has collapsed. Where was the body of Al-Tajari Khalid? Buried under the dust. The judge sighed deeply and said, Aziz Al-Qadir was injected into testosterone. This is unjust. No one killed him. He killed her with his lust and arrogance. The judge ordered it to be confiscated. What's left of the treasure is in the basement. For the benefit of the state.
And it must be confirmed that the merchant is dead.
And the next morning,
I engaged in New Shamsun. On the village of Alchind and Kadir.
The crowds were storming out.
My commercial palace is Khalid. The judge sat on the podium.
And his turban is Aaron.
And his father, the disciple. He was a merciful father. And Masih Zain is not present.
And the mother of all the villagers.
The judge issued his historic ruling.
Traitor Khalid was an unjust man.
And a usurper. And after his death,
according to the law,
all will be distributed.
Unlawful assault on workers.
What we encounter.
Because he is Aaron, he risked my life.
Because my leader is an oppressed mother.
She was an orphan from slavery. A large portion of the ancient treasure, which was found in before the palace.
He solemnly congratulated him. As a subsidy from the state. We never heard people say that. Until the sounds of joy rose.
In the whole village.
Embrace a merciful father Aaron.
And he's crying.
That father who made Aaron wake up.
10 years of earning. Because he let him.
Today he was proud of her. There were tears in Aaron's eyes. It rises to the sky.
He thought he lost his life when he gave 100 scarring cuts. But God accepted this pure intention. And in a few days, make him a ruler of the wealth you share.
Night AZT in freedom. It became the palace of Al-Tajiri Khalid,
which was once a place of injustice. A house for Aaron,
in which tables are furnished for the poor and orphans.
A Masih Zainab and her daughter, Aaron, lost their job.
As members of a family
with respect and dignity. That poor worker, who never had. This is in his feet.
He became Uthkra among the people with his generosity.
A promise to him in all the region.
When a person sacrifices everything he has in order to help the Dark One,
he may seem foolish to the world.
But fate
never wastes this goodness. God opens doors for his servant.
He had never imagined it.
Remember, on the path of goodness, people may face difficulties. But it really is a surah of great success from God. Or shine is always his fate.
Dark grave.
Indeed, the reward of the type of work is right.
Our friends,
we want this story to be your answer.
We look effortless. And quite a lot. Let us present to you this historical story.
If you like our work, share this video with your friends.